Cool, no worries. Have a good presentation.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're well. My name's Jane Virgo and I'm part of the LGA Procurement team. If I haven't met you before, welcome. This is the second webinar that we've been running in the electric vehicle and associated industry space. It's really great to have you, and thanks so much for your feedback and questions we've been receiving. Looking forward to continue working with you. Please don't mind the chimes that are coming from my end. I'm letting people into the webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping points for this webinar. We do mute everyone on entry just to make sure it's quiet for the presentation, but we love questions, so please feel free to pop them in the chat. If you haven't used the chat before, just tap your screen or hover your mouse, and on your screen there's a chat button. It does go to everyone in the webinar, what you write, and we'll have a question and answer section at the end of the webinar to address those, and if we can't address them here, we'll get back to you and everyone. I think that's it for housekeeping, so I'd like to hand over to Andrew Haste, CEO, LGA Procurement. Andrew, you might have to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for that, Jane. As Jane mentioned, this is our second webinar, but it's actually our third event in the electric vehicle journey together. And I congratulate you and thank you for making the time today to join us on this. Some of you have been with us on this entire journey. Some of you are just joining us today. The journey started with a field trip to Melbourne just before the COVID lockdown, which was an interesting flight in and out of Melbourne on the one day, where we were hosted by SEA Electric, including the opportunity to drive some of their trucks and buses fully electric, which was an eye-opening experience for the people that attended. This was followed by a total cost of ownership webinar a week or two ago that provided us with a well-rounded view of the costs associated and the benefits associated with upgrading your fleet to being fully electric. And now today we'll gain an in-depth understanding of the charging infrastructure required and some of the opportunities that can be taken in the public realm in that respect, and also gain some first-hand experiences from East Waste with their electric truck, the first one in South Australia. So I thank you all for attending. I thank the organisers and I thank the speakers that'll lead us through this today. And I'd introduce Tim Washington from JetCharge to take over. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for the intro. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, so thanks everyone. So my name is Tim Washington. I'm the CEO of JetCharge. We are an electric vehicle charging infrastructure business. And essentially what we do is we are what they call a turnkey charging infrastructure provider. So that applies to whether you're installing a charging station in your garage, and we do that for 15 vehicle brands around Australia, or you want to basically electrify your entire depot and you've got like 30, 40 garbage trucks that you've bought through C Electric, we do that too. So what does that mean? Well, we essentially, the process is we come on site, we do a site survey, look at what you've got, we'll do the site design, grid upgrade application. We'll supply you with the hardware, batteries, if required. We partner with other people on solar. Then we do the electrical works and do the energy management on the back end. So the technology that kind of balances the charging and also the software that does the kind of tracking of electricity use. So from start where we don't know anything about the site to finish where we've installed all the charging stations and you're able to basically operate as usual, we do all of that. We've been around since 2014, and I think the difference with us is that we've really had built up through experience. So we're not a traditional startup in the sense that like we didn't, go out and get a lot of money and basically try and develop stuff. We kind of started out as electricians for Tesla, and we slowly built through there. And as of the middle of this year, I think we've deployed more than 3,500 charging stations across Australia, which is by far the most of anyone in the country. And you know, I can't remember who was on this call, but it's likely that we would have already worked with you. We're Australia-wide, and we've got our technicians in South Australia as well. So we've got a sister company, ChargeFox, which is the largest charging network in the country. Okay, so there are 4 things that I'd really like to get across today. The first is that when you're kind of thinking about how many charging stations you need, that is normally the first question we get. The simplest answer is you need 1 per vehicle. And the reason for that is because the biggest cultural change you'll need to make is encouraging people to plug in the car when they get back to the depot. And you have to account for the lowest common denominator. As much as we all like to think that we're responsible adults and we will do the right thing, things that our fleet managers tell us to do, the reality, as you know, is far from that. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to take away excuses for the vehicle not being charged. And so by having a 1-to-1 charger to vehicle ratio, you make sure there's always a charger available. The second is you want to make sure that the charger is connected to the internet. Because if it's not connected to the internet or it doesn't have metering, you can't account for your energy costs or your fuel costs. And I will say fuel costs instead of electricity costs, because at the end of the day, electricity for these electric vehicles is just another form of fuel. You would never imagine not tracking your fuel use for your current vehicles. And the same principle applies to electricity. You don't want to give away the electricity. You want to be able to track that. The third thing is you'll have to go DC charging eventually. We'll go through what that means in a sec. And the last is you'll probably need energy management because you might not have enough supply to your site to charge all the vehicles you need. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through this. It's a comment about plug standards. And for those of you who don't know, in Australia, we finally got our act together and we're able to basically say with confidence that these plugs are the plugs we're going to use. So you don't have to worry about plugs anymore. For C Electric, they use the Type 2 standard here for their AC charging. And I'll go through what the difference between AC and DC in a sec. For AC charging, and they use CCS2 for DC charging. CHAdeMO is also used for DC charging, but that's more the Japanese manufacturers. So CCS2 and Type 2, these are the 2 that you want to think about. Okay, so let me just quickly go through what AC and DC charging means. And sorry if I'm teaching you how to suck eggs, but our grid runs on AC electricity and the batteries for these electric vehicles run on DC electricity. You need a way to go from AC to DC, right? With AC charging, that rectification process happens inside the vehicle. And so what that means is that, you know, it will pump AC into the vehicle, it will get rectified inside the vehicle, and then it will charge the battery. With C electric trucks, for example, the maximum AC charge rate is what we call 22 kilowatts. Okay, you don't really need to know what that means, just have that number in mind, 22 kilowatts. Now, DC charging, as you can imagine, is where the AC to DC rectification happens inside the charger, and DC electricity is pumped directly into the battery pack. Now, if you want to have higher kilowatt rates, you need to essentially basically have bigger and bigger rectifiers. The DC chargers, because they don't have the constraint of size for the rectification modules, they can do things a lot quicker. And you can go all the way, you can go all the way up to 350 kilowatts, whereas the maximum here is 22 kilowatts. Okay, so this you're charging hours, this takes overnight. All right, so I'm just going to go through a few scenarios for you. And so it becomes very clear that a lot of the things we suggest as a business are staged. So if you're getting your first electric vehicle, no one from JetCharge is going to come in and say, we need to future-proof you for 100 vehicles, right? We'll never ask you to spend like, you know, heaps and heaps of money just to charge one vehicle. That'll never happen. And so a lot of what I'm kind of telling you now can actually be built upon each other. And it's only when you're doing a big site upgrade, for example, that we'll talk to you about future-proofing. But we try and make the absolute most of your existing infrastructure because we know that charging is often a barrier to EV uptake. So we try and take it nice and slow. The first is what we call toe in the water. When you buy your C electric vehicle, you will basically get a juice booster. This is a portable charging station that you can plug directly into the truck. And on the other end is a 32 amp three-phase industrial power point, which is 22 kilowatts. So if you've got those 32 amp three-phase power points lying around your depot or your workshop, you can actually get one of these portable charging stations and plug it directly into that power point, and you're done. That's it. So it doesn't cost anything really. Now, there's no cost monitoring, there's no fuel consumption, right? So you don't actually know how much it's going to cost you. You can, for example, put an electricity meter next to this power point, and so then you can see how much electricity is using. But obviously, you know, that's kind of not very scalable, but it is what we call a toe in the water, right? So this is kind of how you do it. It's really designed for your first electric vehicle, and it will fully charge your electric vehicle overnight, okay? Second stage is where we get a little bit more serious. It's where we say we have dedicated, like either wall mount or floor mount level 2 charging stations. And this is where most of the fleets are at with their commercial vehicles. They've gone from this about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, to now this. This is actually not for trucks, as you can see. This is for cars. This is in the ACT government. We've basically done, I don't know, 100 or so charging stations for them as they kind of transfer their fleet. But it's dedicated, it's on the wall, it's connected to the internet. You get a dashboard to show you how much electricity you've used. And that parking spot is reserved for electric vehicles. And so this is kind of more where you're getting to 2, 3 trucks. You want this kind of setup. One of these charging stations is pretty cheap. It's about $2,000. And then you can get more industrial units that are like dual port, and you know, they're kind of 6,500 to 7,000. So it's still not like ridiculous, but it is obviously more expensive. And you can start integrating it with solar. So this is at the City of Newcastle. What they did was putting kind of solar canopies to supplement their grid supply electricity, and we try and match the charging to the solar canopy. So you can start seeing that with level 2 dedicated charging, you can start integrating renewables as well as battery storage into your charging portfolio. So I call that stage 2A, and it can happen together or separately. Stage 3 is basically where we say, all right, you've decided that electric commercial vehicles are your future. You're getting very serious about it now. You want to make sure that these time-critical vehicles are charged up when they need to be. So they include things like garbage trucks that need to go out on time, any community services vehicles that need to go out on time. And so that's when we start introducing what we call DC charging. And so as you'll recall before, DC charging charges your vehicles a lot faster. And what we typically see in depots is they either have DC chargers for all of their mission critical vehicles, or they only have DC charging for a few of their vehicles and the rest are AC charging to be charged overnight. So you can have a combination of those things. And Jet Charger's job is to come in and kind of let you know what the best combination is. So it's not up to you to kind of come to us and say, Tim, I think we need, you know, 2 175 kilowatt units, 3 50 kilowatt units, and 10, 22. Like, that's not your job. Your job is to say, this is how many vehicles we want. This is when they need to go out for. And Jet Charge, you come and advise us as to like how we do it. So I built this business on this concept of no compromise for fleets, right? So just because you're switching over to electric doesn't mean you need to compromise. And in fact, it should make your operations better. I actually don't think you should switch to electric if you feel like you need to compromise, because it doesn't scale, right? People don't like it. You don't like it. So what we do is we implement this stuff so there's no compromises. There is a lot of power going through this. So this Berlin bus terminal, as an example, where they have 30 DC charging stations, 3 megawatts of power. Your depot probably only has 160, probably only has like 100 kind of amps, 160 amps, which is only like 70, 80 kilowatts. Whereas if you have 30 of these DC charging stations, you have 3 megawatts. It's a lot. So we help you manage that. And we're starting to see that happen. So this gets pretty expensive, but it's basically where you've committed to an electric fleet. Okay, so very quickly, the next thing you want to do is track your fleets, right? Now, we run a platform called ChargeFox. It basically helps you track all the electricity usage. I can give a bigger deep dive to people who are interested, But essentially, all I'm saying is that no matter what provider you use, ChargeFox is currently the biggest and most widely used, but whoever you choose to use, make sure you have a way to track your electricity costs. It's really important for reporting. You know, when your execs ask you how much is this costing the council, you need to be able to tell them that. So whatever you do, make sure you have a software platform that sits behind you. Make sure whoever's providing that platform provides you with 24/7 support, so that if the charger goes down or whatever, there's someone on the other side helping you no matter what time it is. Because as we know, a lot of the operations are early in the morning. Just a bit more about the ChargeFox network. But I won't go through it in too much detail. Okay, so energy management, what is this about? This is about essentially allowing you to have more charging stations in the site than your site electrical supply otherwise allows. So what I mean by that is, you know, we might put in 20 chargers, and for those 20 chargers, it may need, you know, basically a heap of electrical supply, but your electrical supply is only here. So if everybody plugs in at the same time, you would exceed your current electrical supply. But the thing for us is that we can use software to ensure that even if your vehicle is plugged in, it's not charging. Because the challenge is not so much, can you charge all the vehicles overnight? You definitely can. The challenge is, can you stop everyone from charging at the same time? And so this is an example of that. In a building, you don't have a lot of cars, everybody charges at the maximum rate. More and more vehicles come back to the depot and you charge at a lower rate, and some vehicles are actually asked to stop charging, so don't charge. Then as vehicles finish charging, people get moved up to the maximum charge rate until everybody has finished charging. So it's about staggering it intelligently, and then we work with you on your vehicle schedules and state of charge of the vehicles to augment that. And this is an example of it in operation. So basically, I know it's very small, you can't really see it, but these lines that are being drawn is the charge rate of the charging station reacting to external conditions. So basically, how many air cons are turned on, you know, other people using lifts or hoists or whatever. And so it dials the charge rate up and down depending on external conditions of the site, so that you don't trip the circuit breakers. And at the end of the day, and I won't go through this in too much detail, but in the end, most depots won't have enough electricity to supply all of their electric trucks that they want to buy. And getting a grid upgrade for the amount of power that you will need will be time consuming and will be fairly expensive. And so in the long run, what you're going to have is a combination of grid upgrades, renewables like solar. So this is 150 kilowatts of solar at our Barnawatha rapid charging site, and battery storage. And so all of those things put together essentially will allow you to electrify your entire fleet. And all the kind of experts on this call will be able to help you do that. And so that's pretty much it. I'm happy to take any questions, but here are the 4 things you really need to keep in mind. If you do these 4 things, you will be able to electrify your entire fleet, and we're happy to help you do that. That's it. So I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks, Tim. Fabulous information. I'm aware that Tim does need to leave our meeting by 10:30, so there's no questions in the chat so far. Did anyone have any questions they'd like to raise with Tim before he jets off? I think they're still taking that information in.
Yeah, that's fine. And look, I'm always around to answer questions, so always happy to. And look, normally how we start with most councils is that we just have people on site and we answer questions.
Yeah, great. Yep, and someone has asked about a copy of the presentation.
Of course, yes.
Yep, and we're recording this webinar. So I did like to mention that at the beginning, that we're recording the webinar and we'll post it on our website.
Yeah. Sorry, Jane, I just thought I might add, we had the pleasure of listening to Tim at the SEA tour. I think, Tim, it was really valuable just to reinforce that, you know, this consideration about how you implement these into the workplace and the community is about, you know, a company like yourself coming in and assessing the current capacity, but then also the short, medium and long-term roadmap that you're able to provide to support the delivery of this stuff as well, I think is a really crucial part of what you offer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much. And that's something we try and do as a business is whenever we install something for people, we kind of give them a 2, 3, 5-year outlook as to what they can expect to do over the next 5 years as they electrify their fleet. Because we know for budgeting purposes, it's really important that you tie in the infrastructure budgets with your fleet budgets. And often, for whatever reason, service providers in the space are really cagey with their information. We tend to overshare. And so, yeah, sometimes that people screw us over for that, but most times we find it's helpful. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And a stage transition is what councils need to hear. Like you said, financially, they need to be able to plan for that.
That's right. I just saw another question.
Yeah, you've seen it? Great. Can you answer that one?
So in terms of how many councils have installed this system, and I think this is something that I'd like to reinforce, is that there is no such thing as a jet charge system, if you'd like. It's kind of more, we come into a site and we basically recommend the best solution for the site. I think we currently work with about 35 to 40 councils who've installed various parts of our jet charge system. So yeah, so we have a lot of experience with councils.
Yeah, that's good. And also just something to add from our end too. I mean, we're building up this sort of case study information for councils with all things electric. So keep watching our space too in terms of case study updates. We've got the Electric Vehicle Council providing us with information. And we're also working with, as Andrew said, East Waste, who have an electric truck. So we'll be posting a video of the General Manager from East Waste shortly.
So I want to ask anyone in Adelaide. So for those of you who've seen the City of Adelaide's EV charging network, we did all of those. So that was that. We've worked with the City of Port Adelaide, Burnside, just trying to think of a few others off the top of my head. But I mean, the most visible one is the City of Adelaide. We are the ones who installed that and manage that and maintain it.
Great. Good news.
Okay.
Thanks so much for your time, Tim.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. See ya. Bye.
So I'd now like to introduce Joe DeSanto from C Electric. Some of you would have met Joe on your trip to Melbourne. I'm going to share my screen again and hand over to Joe. Joe, you'll have to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Thanks. Jane, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Look, first and foremost, I just want to say a big thank you and my gratitude towards the LGA. The way you're leading the charge for empowering councils with information with EV trucks is leading Australia, to be honest, with any other organisation that we work with. So I just want to acknowledge the LGA and the role that they're playing in educating the South Australian councils. It really is great to work with you guys and be part of such a well-structured and great initiative. So thanks again for the opportunity today. So yeah, the brief today is just to give you a quick orientation if you don't know much about C Electric, and give you an orientation of who we are and what we do, and then also to touch on more about I suppose the circular economy of how we fit into solar and how we help councils with their objectives. So in getting started, I think I've got 6 minutes, so I'll make it nice and punchy. We're an Australian privately owned company, and in a long story short, if we go to the next slide, we basically have what is now commonly known in the marketplace as is almost the gold standard of EV trucks. And just if you can get that slide going through, yeah. So what we found out in working with companies like Ford in the US and Toyota here in Australia and a few other big OEMs is we use OEM trucks because they're beautifully developed trucks already meeting all the safety and integral requirements of an OEM vehicle. And the fact that our vehicle transformation into an EV uses the suspension and brakes of the donor truck, our batteries and motor configuration fit within the chassis of the vehicle, maintaining the safety of the battery cell within the chassis, and also the handling characteristics of the vehicle makes it a very seamless transition for us to work with truck brands that you already have an association with. Essentially what we can offer from a truck range is 4.5 tonne rigid all the way through to a 23.5 tonne rigid truck. It's quite a wide range, so everything from a small little tipper to a big waste refuse truck. So we have the different battery and motor combinations to meet the demand of those vehicles' requirements. If we go to the next slide, our target market essentially is around, most of our vehicles are circa 200 kilometres on a charge. So most of our customers, be it private or government bodies, have a back to base 200 Ks, charge overnight, and off they go again the next day. And that's really our core market. Those entities that are doing long haul stuff, trips from Adelaide to Melbourne and things like that, obviously there's not an EV solution for that at the moment. There's fuel cell technology coming up in the future, which also incorporates electric technology, but our market, and which is over 500,000 trucks in the market at the moment that do 200 Ks per day, is our core target for what we try and do at the moment. So the next slide is, which is really a very exciting time for us at Sea Electric. As we've sort of tried to do our own vehicles, we're now becoming more and more noticed, and we are officially now starting to partner with larger OEMs. It'll become official in the next few weeks that SEA will be essentially offering a Hino truck range, badged as an SEA vehicle, and we'll have 12 Hino dealerships across Australia that will be selling the vehicles directly to councils and obviously private customers. And what that means is now that as a local council, you already have that system in place, and a lot of what we've done and a lot of the infrastructure that we've tried to create is for all of our customers is a path of least resistance. Even though it's an electric truck, we don't want it to be a different experience. We want it to be something that you're very used to. And instead of choosing to buy a diesel truck, you choose it to be an electric truck. It's procured in the same way. It's delivered through to you in the same way. The warranty and the service are offered to you in the same way. And this association with Hino Japan and Australia is very, very exciting. It's actually a world first for an OEM brand to offer 100% electric vehicles through a dealership model, is literally a world first. And CMI Hino Adelaide will be our partner in South Australia. So this is just a quick view. Doing a great job, by the way, Jane, thank you. This is just a quick view of some of the vehicles that we've done. As you can see, refuse products, Woolworths refrigerated trucks, small and large. We've actually got a couple of cherry pickers or elevated work platform trucks in our warehouse at the moment that we're finishing off for energy utilities, Pantech trucks, and in the top right-hand corner, you'll actually see the City of Yarra tipper truck, which a lot of the people who came and visited us earlier in the year would have seen and potentially had a drive in. It's a great vehicle, and it created a lot of interest to be able to have a Parks and Gardens tipper truck that has no emissions, no noise, whilst in operation in that Parks and Gardens environment. It's a great advertisement for the council and their initiatives, and it's just a great truck full stop. So that's sort of a bit of a pin-up truck for us, and especially for our target market being the local councils that we're on today. That vehicle tends to be a wonderful starting point to enter into your first 1 or 2 or 3 EV trucks. And just quickly on the left-hand corner, you'll see the UPS truck, which is essentially the same platform. It's called an F59 chassis, and it's the same truck or bus that you will see in for the UPS and also the yellow school buses. It's called an F59, and the US Ford USA does about 100,000 of those a year, and we're starting to partner with them in Detroit to set up an assembly line to do those type of vehicles moving forward. So it's a very exciting opportunity for us in the US. Yep, next slide. So this is a really important slide because this is really trying to, there's a lot of information I can keep talking about C Electric and more than happy to do that probably on a one-on-one basis. But, you know, the first and foremost thing that we recognise is that there's a whole heap of initiatives going on in the marketplace and by our customers, and many of those being councils themselves. So the fact that commercial vehicles can contribute, you know, 50% of the total carbon emission or footprint of that council, the ability to introduce EV trucks is a huge initiative to the targets and the mandates that so many councils, if not every council, has in place and striving to achieve by, you know, dates like 2025 and 50% and 100%. There's really some really aggressive initiatives out there. So the ability for us to offer a product finally to the marketplace in through an OEM dealer facility is very exciting and is going to have the ability for councils to really aggressively start reducing their carbon footprint in a really pragmatic way. And the bottom line on this point is that you can now approach a dealership and buy a vehicle today. And it's very, very here and now. So it's not something in the future. As you can already tell, we've already, there's about 50 trucks in the marketplace already, and that's about to grow exponentially through the new dealer system that we have in place. Obviously, you know, most of the councils have invested in solar, and some of them have battery installations as well. So the ability to feed that beautiful renewable energy into a truck, and, you know, in effect, you're not paying for fuel, is really the ultimate aspiration, to be able to fuel your vehicles through renewable energy, and that is totally doable. And obviously, us working with organisations and what they're, and as Tim was alluding to before, we need to all step back to a certain degree and tip your toe in the water. But then once you start to understand the scalability and the opportunities that are afforded through EV vehicles, then you can start to look at what type of solar systems and battery systems that can help accommodate the energy requirements and the charging requirements. So, you know, that's a whole other discussion, but, you know, we play an important role as almost at the end of that cycle, or the start of the cycle of the solar and battery solution that you will hopefully have in place at some point in time. One of the things that people are starting to ask us about is how long does the battery last in a truck? The long story short is roughly about 10 years. And at that point in time, that battery, let's call it a 100 kilowatt hour battery, which is our smallest battery for a truck, will still have about 70 to 80% life in that battery. And many people are asking us, can they use that battery in the future to store solar power? And the answer is yes. So one of the biggest assets of a truck, in an EV truck, is the batteries. And being able to repurpose, regenerate, or use it as storage is certainly an option. And it also increases the residual value of the vehicle. You know, 12 months ago, people were saying, what's an EV vehicle going to be worth? The question now is what a diesel vehicle is going to be worth in 10 years. So these are the things that are really starting to come to the fore. Just some quick points. Please understand, as Tim was mentioning, all of our vehicles require, at this point in time, there is fast charging opportunities or upgrades, but all you need is 3-phase power, 32 amp plug, and you can charge your truck. So remember, you can buy a truck. There's no additional cost for infrastructure. Maybe you need to move the power point. There's a few $100s in that. But essentially, you can buy a truck today and you can plug it into the wall. We actually provide the cable with the truck as part of the purchase. So you literally plug it into the wall and into the truck, and you can charge your truck overnight. Once again, the dealership model is designed to make it comfortable, a process that the councils already understand and have set up relationships with. And once again, lowering the barriers to entry. And then finally, you're meeting all your KPIs as an organisation and your targets. But at the end of the day, for the councils to show the constituents the fact that they've got EV trucks in their fleets operating, beautifully signed to show that their council's at the fore and as a real leader, it's a fantastic marketing tool. You guys are doing such great work in leading Australia and even private organisations in the awareness and the uptake of renewable energy and EV vehicles. It's important that you market that and create awareness. And so when we sell a vehicle to a council, they do all their own marketing, but we actually plug that into our global platform as well. And so not only do we educate and back onto your marketing for the Australian market, but it actually goes global. So someone like the City of Yarra had 17,000 hits in one day from the launch of our communications, which was really just piggybacking their press releases and so forth. So the great marketing opportunity to really show off all the hard work the councils are doing and leading the community in these initiatives is really important, and we help facilitate that. So I can go on and on and on, and there's potentially a few questions there, but at the end of the day, that's what I'd like to communicate with you today, and there's always an opportunity to speak in more detail in the future.
Thanks so much, Joe. Fabulous information. I'm just going to stop my share because I did see a chat, but for some reason it's blocked me. There is a question from Tim Kelly. I don't know if you can see that yourself, Joe. I'll read it out. It says, after reuse of the battery, can it then be rebuilt? Is there a move to standard casing so that the metals and electrolytes then can be removed, reprocessed, and new components fitted to the battery?
Yes, so in 10 years' time, there are already companies out there talking to us about the ability to rejuvenate, so replace the cells or invigorate the cells or recycle the batteries completely if they're not useful. But we tend to think that customers will start to think about either selling them to renewable solar farms as an asset, going to a great source of energy, or using the batteries for their own solar purposes. If not, they can be rejuvenated and resold in the marketplace. So whichever way you go, there's an asset that you'll make money from in one shape or another.
That's great. Thank you. I don't think there's any other questions at this stage. There was a comment from Darren about EV trucks. How are they going with towing? Most of their fleet tow trailers and other plant. I noticed a note from Martin, but perhaps you could also talk to it, Joe, that the issue or non-issue with towing. Yeah,
well, it's part of the EV. So essentially, normally you have your gross vehicle mass, and then you got your gross combination mass. So your gross combination mass is your vehicle weight that it can carry, plus the additional weight of a trailer and whatever it may be. With an EV vehicle, we have to fit the total capacity of the payload and also the trailer load as part of the GBM. So if someone normally has an 8-ton truck and has a 3-ton payload or 3-ton trailer mass that they want to carry, we have to spec them up to a vehicle that has a gross vehicle mass of, let's say, 11 or 12 ton, and that'll meet all their needs. So there's a little bit of a limitation there with EV vehicles, but by increasing essentially the size of the vehicle to the next size, we're able to meet all the weight carrying capacities. But there is a little bit of a compromise there, but not one vehicle has not been sold because of that as an issue. We've always been able to sell and accommodate and meet the customer's needs.
Great, thanks so much. Excellent. We'll move on to our last speaker, Bronte Modra from Specialised Solutions, South Australian based. I'm just going to share my screen again, everyone. And Bronte, if you'd like to unmute yourself,
Yep.
Take it away.
Thanks, Jane. I'm Bronte Modra from Specialised Solar Solutions. We're a manufacturing business based in Tonsley, where we design and construct a range of solar structures across Australia. These obviously include solar car parks, which have many benefits, an obvious one being the ability to charge electric vehicles with clean, green energy. We've installed over 2 megawatts worth of solar car parks in the last 12 months. And to really maximise the benefits of the structures, there are a few things to consider. We obviously look at the site selection and utilising the generated energy. As energy is generated during the day, it's obviously the best time to channel this straight back into your existing business, or if your business has a fleet of electric vehicles or C trucks, powering them straight up is obviously the best option. So locations such as council depots or chambers or operating business are prime examples. The solar canopies can obviously be then used for customer parking or customer charging their own EVs, or just additional undercover parking to the public. Another location that's very popular is obviously shopping centres, where shoppers are drawn to undercover parking. They typically park there for a duration where they can achieve a reasonable charge, and they're normally spending money within the particular centre. Another important locations for us is regional and remote locations, in particular tourism attractions. We need to be able to draw people away from the suburban areas where the infrastructure typically is, and provide confidence in the charging infrastructure. People need to be able to drive a distance to a site to explore the local area while knowing these vehicles can be charged while they're having a look around the regional town, so they can either return home or move through to another destination. Looking into local traffic movement and destinations is critical when selecting the charging sites. Having that capability is obviously going to really draw in EV owners. As more and more charging hubs pop up, this will provide a greater confidence for people to enter the EV market, and knowing that there's a greater range and a selection of destinations. Our structures are all architecturally designed and customised to each site, obviously taking into consideration the terrain, the local environment and the use of the site. They obviously provide additional benefits around shade and protection from the elements. We also have a watertight canopy, which creates quite a large catchment area. So this can be funneled off into fire tanks or other storage and use. These structures range from obviously large commercial car parks right down to individual carports or rural sheds. They can be in a grid connect or standalone. Some of the challenges we work with resolving is obviously scaling the size of the solar to the load required to battery storage for off-grid, and then obviously sizing the electric vehicle chargers as well. We have a off-grid containerised system as well with the battery storage built into it. These are obviously very quick to deploy, and they've obviously got the benefits of being relocatable, ideal for either events or disaster relief. In addition to the solar car parks, we have a whole range of solar furniture powering everything from USB chargers to wireless phone chargers to LED lights through to electric barbecues. In summary, I guess, we're here to support the growth of the electric vehicle market and to ensure that the infrastructure is developed accordingly. This will obviously give the consumers confidence in yeah, that the structures are there. So yeah, it's a very exciting space, and we're keen to work with as many partners as possible. Obviously, you know, companies like C in regard to their electric vehicle trucks, but also partnering with charge operators such as ChargeBox, so that you can actually get a return on your investment. Yeah, so a bit brief, but yeah, I'm not sure if there's too many questions.
Thanks, Bronte. That's great. Just going to check the chat. Anyone have any questions for Bronte? I'm sure they'll come in as people take in what you've shown us. Fabulous images of what you've done so far.
Yeah, we don't use a roof sheet. We actually use the solar panel as the roofing material. And have developed an aluminium extrusion that mounts that to create a watertight system.
Andrew, did you want to say something? I can see
Sure.
right now.
I was just going to suggest that, Bronte, we benefited from visiting your facility and talking to you personally and seeing some of the work that you're doing and understanding the philosophy behind it. Is that available to other people from this group to come down and talk to you?
Yeah, most definitely. We're more than open to people having a look and coming up with a solution.
Cool.
Fantastic. It's really great. I'd like to hand over to Martin Borges now, Operations Manager, LGA Procurement, who will have a chat with you all.
Thanks, Jane. And thanks everyone for making time and committing your attention to this program. Look, it's really great and quite an exciting space with the electric vehicle and the broader solar conversation, and also the ability of some really innovative Australian suppliers to have a significant impact on your council's carbon footprint and support you in these climate change declarations. One other thing that I'll probably just draw your attention to really quickly is that all of the people you've heard from today are on our preferred supplier panel in different categories, but they've been engaged by LGA Procurement after quite an extensive procurement process, and that's based on the alignment of the businesses' way that they deal with their customers and also their ability to deliver innovative solutions to help councils meet their objectives. So we're really proud to partner with both JetCharge, with SEA Electric and also Specialised Solutions, and we're more than happy with the team to answer any questions if anyone's got anything. So thanks again for your attention. The email address for procurement questions is up on the screen at the moment, and Jane will share that with you individually, and we look forward to the next time we're able to meet with you. Excuse my dog in the background, working from home. Just one of the many benefits, but we are certainly appreciate your time and look forward to the next time our paths cross.
And I'll just end with that. Thanks, Martin. Just with our gallery, our online gallery, we are posting the webinars up. It uses YouTube as a platform to play, so you're welcome to replay that at your place of work. We've had lots of requests for being able to watch the first webinar. That's up. I'll put this one up probably by Monday next week. We've also got some case studies coming out. We've got information from Port Adelaide Enfield, if you missed the last webinar, where Chris talked about their learnings, their business case, how they're going transitioning, and also East Waste. So those will be up on our website as well as a frequently asked questions sheet. But as Martin said, that email address is for all of you to touch base with us with any questions or concerns you have. And we have our e-newsletter that comes out regularly with updates and information about events that we're hosting. So don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, everyone. There's no other questions that I can see. So we'll end the session and hope to speak with you soon. And yeah, please touch base. Thanks again.